Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story.
What would you do if your tenant called you to help, insulted your clothes, and then called the cops on you for trespassing in a building you own? That's the position I was in. This woman couldn't accept the guy in the work booth could be her landlord, so I decided to teach her a lesson in professionalism she would never see coming.
I've been a software developer for about 15 years now, and I've done pretty well for myself. Nothing crazy, but well enough that I was able to start investing in rental properties about 8 years ago. I started small with a duplex, then gradually worked my way up. Now I own 4 properties, 2 duplexes, a 4-unit building, and a small apartment building with 8 units. Here's the thing about me though, I'm not your typical landlord. I still work my day job in tech, and I genuinely enjoy doing a lot of the property maintenance myself. It's therapeutic after spending all day staring at code. Plus, it saves money, and I can make sure things are done right. I'm not trying to play property mogul. I just like having the investment income, and I take pride in maintaining my buildings well. I dress casually. Very casually. My usual weekend outfit is old jeans, worn-out t-shirts, work boots that have seen better days, and a baseball cap. I drive a 10-year-old pickup truck that's dinged up and has paint stains on the bed from when I repainted one of my properties. I look like a handyman or maintenance worker, not someone who owns multiple properties. And honestly, I prefer it that way. No pretense, no showing off. I'm just a guy who owns some buildings and takes care of them. This story is about one particular tenant in my 4-unit building. For the sake of this story, I'll call her Karen, because honestly, that's exactly what she was. Karen responded to my listing for a 2-bedroom unit in what I consider my nicest building. It's an older building but well-maintained, in a good neighborhood with tree-lined streets and close to shopping and restaurants. The rent was fair for the area, not cheap but not overpriced either, right at market rate. When Karen came to view the apartment, I was there to show it to her. I just finished replacing a faucet in another unit, so I was in my usual work clothes, a bit sweaty, hands still a little dirty despite having washed them. She showed up in expensive-looking athleisure wear, designer sunglasses, carrying a handbag that probably cost more than my entire outfit including the truck. She looked around the apartment, asked the usual questions, and seemed interested. When it came time to discuss the lease, she asked who she should contact for maintenance issues. I told her she could reach out to me directly, and I gave her my phone number and email. "So you're the property manager?" she asked. I could have corrected her right then. I could have said, "No, I'm the owner," but honestly, I didn't see the point. I basically was the property manager. I handled all the day-to-day stuff, so I just said, "Yeah, you can contact me for anything you need." She seemed satisfied with that and submitted an application. Her credit was good, income verified fine, references checked out. Pretty standard stuff. I approved her application and she signed the lease. It was a standard 1-year lease with all the usual clauses, quiet enjoyment, maintenance responsibilities, notice periods, all of it clearly laid out. For the first couple of months, everything was fine. She'd contact me occasionally about minor things, a light bulb that needed replacing in a hard-to-reach fixture, a window that was sticking, normal stuff. I'd come by within a day or two and take care of it. We'd chat briefly, I'd fix whatever needed fixing, and that would be that. But somewhere around the 3-month mark, her attitude started to shift. It started with little comments. She was 3 months into a 1-year lease when I came by to fix a loose cabinet hinge in her kitchen. It was a simple repair, took me maybe 10 minutes. But when I told her I was done, she looked at me like I'd just told her I needed to demolish a wall. Then she said something I'll never forget. "That took you 30 minutes to fix a hinge? This building is clearly mismanaged if they hire people like you who don't know how to do simple repairs quickly." First off, it took me 10 minutes, not 30. She'd been watching TV in the living room the whole time, not paying attention. Second, there was nothing wrong with how I fixed it. I'd actually reinforced it better than it had been originally, but I didn't argue. I just said, "Have a good day," and left. After that, the comments kept coming and got progressively worse. Every interaction became an opportunity for her to talk down to me. She started calling me the help in her voicemails. She'd make comments about how I probably didn't understand what quality standards were. She'd ask me to take my boots off before entering her apartment, which I actually didn't mind doing, but the way she said it made it clear she thought I was tracking in dirt from whatever gutter she assumed I lived in. The thing was, I was bending over backwards for this woman. When she had an issue, I'd rearrange my schedule to get there quickly. I'd go out of my way to make sure everything was perfect. With my other tenants, we had a friendly relationship. They knew I owned the buildings, we'd chat about our lives, they'd offer me coffee when I came by. It was pleasant. With Karen, every interaction felt like I was being evaluated and found wanting. About 5 months into her lease, I got a call from her on a Saturday morning. She said her bathroom sink was draining slowly and she needed it fixed immediately because she had guests coming over that evening. I was actually out of town that weekend for a friend's wedding, about 2 hours away. I explained that I was out of town, but I could come by first thing Monday morning, or if it was truly an emergency, I could call a plumber to come out, though weekend emergency rates would apply, and the lease stated that tenant-caused plumbing issues were the tenant's financial responsibility. She went off on me. Told me this was unacceptable, that I was clearly incompetent, that she couldn't believe someone like me was trusted to manage properties, and that she'd be reporting me to the property owner for my terrible service. I almost laughed at that last part. Instead, I just calmly repeated that I'd be happy to send an emergency plumber at her expense, or I could take care of it Monday morning. She huffed and said Monday would have to do since she wasn't going to waste money on a plumber for something I should be handling. Monday morning, I showed up at 9 a.m. sharp. I knocked on her door and she answered in a silk robe, clearly annoyed at being up that early. She pointed me to the bathroom and went back to her bedroom without another word. The sink issue was hair and soap buildup in the drain. Totally normal, very common, takes about 15 minutes to clear. I snaked the drain, tested it, cleaned up, and it was good as new. I knocked on her bedroom door to let her know I was done. She opened it and immediately asked if I'd properly cleaned up after myself because you people always leave a mess. I confirmed everything was clean and left. I sat in my truck for a few minutes afterward, genuinely considering whether to tell her I owned the building, but I decided against it. I didn't want to make things weird, and honestly I was curious to see how long this would go on. I should have just told her. It would have saved a lot of hassle, but hindsight is 20/20. The breaking point came about 6 weeks later. The building has a shared laundry room in the basement. It's well lit, clean, perfectly safe. I'd been down there doing some routine maintenance on the water heater. Nothing major, just checking the pressure valve and temperature settings, standard preventative stuff that I try to do annually on all my properties. I was kneeling next to the water heater, tools spread out on the floor, wearing my usual grungy work clothes. My hands were dirty, I probably had cobwebs in my hair from squeezing behind the unit, and I definitely looked like I'd been working. I heard footsteps on the basement stairs and looked up to see Karen coming down with a laundry basket. She saw me and stopped dead in her tracks. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "Maintenance on the water heater," I said, gesturing to the unit. "Just routine stuff." "Does the owner know you're here?" "Yes," I said, which was technically true since I knew I was there. She seemed suspicious but went about loading her laundry. I went back to what I was doing. I figured that would be the end of it. Then she came over to where I was working. She stood over me with her arms crossed. "You know, I've been thinking about reporting you," she said. I looked up at her. "Reporting me for what?" "For your incompetence, for your poor service, for the way you dress and present yourself. You're a reflection of this property, and honestly, you make it look bad. I've been thinking about contacting the actual owner and letting them know how poorly their building is being managed." I took a breath. "Look, I understand you have concerns. If you want to file a formal complaint, you're welcome to do that, but I've responded to every maintenance request you've made, usually within 24 hours. I've fixed everything that needed fixing. I'm not sure what else you want from me." "I want competence," she snapped. "I want someone who actually looks and acts professional. You look like you're homeless. You show up in ratty clothes driving that beat-up truck. How do I even know you're really supposed to be here? How do I know you're actually employed by the owner and not just some random guy who goes around fixing things in buildings you don't belong in?" That's when I'd had enough. I stood up, wiped my hands on a rag, and pulled out my wallet. I showed her my driver's license. "This is my ID. My name is on the deed to this building. I don't work for the owner. I am the owner." She stared at the license, then at me, then back at the license. Her expression went through several changes. Confusion, disbelief, then something that might have been embarrassment. For a second, I thought maybe she'd apologize. Instead, she doubled down. "No, no way. There's no way you're the owner. You're lying." "I'm not lying. I own this building. I own 3 other properties in the city. You signed your lease with me. My name is on your lease agreement." She pulled out her phone and I could see her pulling up photos of her lease. Her face went pale as she apparently confirmed that yes, the name on the lease matched the name on my license, but instead of apologizing, instead of showing any kind of remorse for how she'd treated me for months, she did something I still can't quite believe. She said there was no way I was the landlord because I looked like I was homeless. She said I was clearly lying and had probably broken in. She said I must have stolen the real owner's identity or something. I was speechless. I just stared at her. "I'm calling the police," she said. "There's an intruder in this building." "Karen, I just showed you my ID. My name is on your lease. I own this building. Don't call the police over this." But she was already dialing. She walked away from me, up the basement stairs, and I could hear her talking to the 911 dispatcher. I stood there in the basement, surrounded by my tools, next to the water heater I'd been maintaining in my own building, and realized that this woman had actually called the cops on me. I wasn't worried about the police. I had plenty of proof that I owned the building, but I was angry. Really angry. This woman had treated me like dirt for months, and now she was wasting police time because she couldn't accept that someone who looked like me could own property. I packed up my tools and went upstairs. I waited in the lobby. About 10 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up. 2 officers got out and approached the building. Karen met them at the front door and immediately started talking about how she'd found me in the basement and I was claiming to be the landlord but clearly wasn't because of how I looked. She kept emphasizing that I looked homeless and suspicious. The officers came inside and one of them approached me while the other stayed with Karen. "Sir, we got a call about a possible trespassing situation. Can you explain what's going on?" I explained calmly that I owned the building, that Karen was one of my tenants, and that I'd been doing routine maintenance when she found me in the basement. I showed them my ID, my keys that opened all the common areas in my own unit, and pulled up photos of the property deed on my phone. The officer looked everything over, then asked if I had any other documentation. I pulled up my property management software on my phone and showed him my account with all my properties listed, including this address and all the tenant leases. The officer nodded and went back to his partner. They spoke with Karen for a few minutes. I could see her getting agitated, gesturing at me, clearly not happy with what they were telling her. Finally, the officer came back to me. "All right, sir, everything checks out. We're sorry for the inconvenience." "I appreciate you guys responding and doing your job," I said. "No hard feelings." The officer gave Karen a look that made it clear he wasn't pleased about having his time wasted, then told us both to have a good day. After they left, Karen came back out. I expected her to just go back to her unit. Maybe I still expected an apology somewhere deep down, but what happened instead was something else entirely. Instead of apologizing, she actually doubled down again. "Look, going forward, I expect you to conduct yourself more professionally as a landlord," she said, arms crossed. "You need to hire actual professionals for all maintenance instead of doing it yourself. I want proper property management procedures with written documentation for everything, just like real corporate landlords do. If you're going to own rental properties, you need to act like it and run things the right way. You can't just show up looking like that and expect tenants to take you seriously." I just stared at her for a moment, then I nodded slowly. "I'll take your suggestions under advisement," I said. She seemed satisfied with that and went back inside. I sat in my truck for a while thinking about what she'd just demanded. Professional conduct, hire professionals, proper procedures, documentation for everything, corporate management style. Okay, she wanted corporate landlord treatment? I could do that. I went home and spent the rest of the day revising how I'd handle everything related to Karen's tenancy. If she wanted everything by the book, everything was going to be by the book. First thing I did was send her a formal notice that I'd be conducting a routine inspection of her unit. The lease allowed for inspections with proper notice, which was 7 days in my state. I'd never actually done formal inspections before. I trusted my tenants and I could see how things were going when I came by for maintenance. But if Karen wanted professional property management includes regular inspections. The inspection was scheduled for the following Thursday at 2 p.m. I showed up in khakis and a button-down shirt instead of my usual work clothes. I brought a clipboard with an official inspection checklist. I knocked on her door exactly at 2. She answered, looking annoyed. "What's this about?" "Routine inspection, as stated in the notice I sent you," I said. "This will take about 20 minutes. She let me in, clearly unhappy about it. I went through every room with my checklist, documenting everything. The inspection revealed several things worth noting. She had removed the batteries from the smoke detectors because, as she informed me when I asked about it, they beeped too much. "You need to replace these batteries within 24 hours, I told her. It's a lease violation and a city code violation. I'll need photographic proof that they've been replaced by tomorrow at this time." "Are you serious?" she asked. "They're annoying." I'm serious. The lease requires functioning smoke detectors at all times. It's also state law, 24 hours. She complied, but complained bitterly about it. A week after that, she submitted a maintenance request for a clogged drain in her kitchen. In the past, I would have just come over with my snake and cleared it myself. Would have taken me 20 minutes and cost nothing. Instead, I called a plumber, a professional plumber. I sent her an email letting her know a licensed plumber would be there the following day between 9 a.m. and noon. "Why are you sending a plumber?" she called me to ask. "Can't you just fix it like you usually do?" "You asked me to hire professionals for all maintenance," I reminded her. "That's what I'm doing." The plumber showed up, cleared the drain, and charged $150. Under my old informal system, I would have just done it myself for free. But she wanted professionals, so that's what she got. I paid for it since it was maintenance, but I made sure she knew. I sent her a formal email documenting the service call, noting that my personal service calls had previously been provided at no additional cost, while professional contractors cost money that landlords factor into rent prices. Over the next few months, every maintenance request went through contractors instead of me handling it personally. Each time, everything was documented formally. When issues were caused by her use of the unit, I let her know that under professional property management, those costs get tracked differently than they had been. The informal, "I'll just fix it for free" approach I used to take was no longer on the table. I also started sending her formal notices about everything. When I needed to access the roof and would be making noise above her unit, she got a written notice. When I scheduled landscaping for the shared yard, written notice. When the city was coming to inspect the building's exterior, written notice. Everything that the lease allowed me to notify her about, I notified her about in writing, formally, just like a big corporate property management company would. I stopped responding to her calls. Everything went through email now. She'd call, I'd let it go to voicemail, then respond via email within 24 hours. Professional, documented, by the book. The friendliness, the flexibility, the going out of my way to help, all of that evaporated. She got exactly what the lease entitled her to. Nothing more, nothing less. As her lease approached the end of its term, I prepared the standard renewal offer. I looked up current market rates for comparable units in the neighborhood. Turns out I'd been undercharging her. The rent I'd set a year ago was below current market rate by a significant margin. When I'd set her rent, I'd been thinking about keeping good tenants happy and keeping occupancy stable. I generally only raised rent by small amounts each year for existing tenants, well below market rate increases because good tenants are worth keeping. But Karen wanted professional property management. Professional property management means charging market rates. I sent her the required 60-day notice that her rent would be increasing by 30% if she chose to renew. It was still within market rate for the area, actually slightly below market rate, but it was a significant jump from what she'd been paying. She called me immediately. I let it go to voicemail. She left an angry message demanding to know why her rent was going up so much. I responded by email. "Dear Karen, the rent adjustment reflects current market rates for comparable units in this area. As outlined in your lease agreement, rent is subject to change upon renewal. Please let me know by date whether you plan to renew at the adjusted rate. Best regards, my name." She tried calling several more times. I responded to each call with a similar email. Professional, by the book. She also sent a long email complaining about how unfair this was, how she'd been a good tenant, how this was clearly retaliation for her reporting me. I responded, "Dear Karen, rent adjustments are based on market conditions and are not retaliatory in nature. Your tenancy has been conducted in accordance with the lease terms. If you choose not to renew, please provide the required 30-day notice before your lease end date. Best regards, my name." During this whole time, I maintained my friendly, flexible relationships with my other tenants. One of them had a late rent payment. His hours got cut at work. I worked with him on a payment plan. Another tenant needed an urgent repair on a weekend. I drove over and fixed it myself that same day. These were good people who treated me with respect, and I returned that respect. But with Karen, everything remained strictly professional and strictly by the book. She ended up deciding not to renew. She sent me her notice to vacate with about 45 days left on her lease. In her notice, she made sure to mention that she was leaving because of my unprofessional behavior and retaliation. When she moved out, I did the final walkthrough inspection with the same formal clipboard and checklist I'd used for the routine inspection. Everything was documented photographically. She'd caused some minor damage beyond normal wear and tear. Some holes in the walls from mounting things, a damaged cabinet door, some scratches on the hardwood floors that looked like furniture had been dragged across them. According to the lease, damages beyond normal wear and tear were the tenant's responsibility. I documented everything, got quotes for repairs, and sent her an itemized list of deductions from her security deposit. It was all legitimate, all documented, all exactly what the lease allowed for. She responded with an angry email threatening to sue me. I responded with copies of the photos, the repair quotes, and the relevant sections of the lease agreement. I never heard from her lawyer. She left a scathing review online, calling me the worst landlord she'd ever had. I responded briefly, pointing out that everything she complained about was outlined in the lease she signed. Several of my other tenants posted their own positive reviews that contradicted her story, talking about how responsive and fair I was. After she left, I re-rented the unit within 2 weeks at the market rate I'd quoted her. The new tenants are great. I fixed their leaking faucet myself last month and they offered me homemade cookies. We chat when I see them. It's pleasant. Looking back on the whole situation, I don't regret how I handled it. Karen wanted professional property management. She wanted everything by the book. She wanted to be treated like a customer rather than like a neighbor. And that's exactly what she got. The irony is that she had it better before than she realized. She had a landlord who responded quickly, who did repairs for free, who charged below market rent, who was flexible and accommodating. But because I didn't look the way she thought a landlord should look, because I didn't fit her image of what a property owner should be, she treated me like garbage. So I gave her exactly what she asked for. Professional property management by the book, no flexibility, no personal touch, just business, and you know what? I don't feel bad about it at all. The next one is a malicious compliance story. This happened in 2013, but I still laugh when I think about it, so I thought I would share. I used to be a fast food manager. Every night, I handled all the inventory. I like to get an early jump on it, so I would usually start roughly 30 minutes before closing. One night, I was counting inventory and getting ready to place the week's orders when my grill guy ran back to the office, tapped his headset, and said, "You need to hear this." That was odd because the person I had working drive-thru was a kid named John. John was adopted from Russia and had a thick Russian accent, but he was objectively the best employee in the entire building. He worked hard, he worked fast, and he was the friendliest person I had ever met. I never had issues on his shifts. I put my headset on and heard this man absolutely berating John. He was telling him to get out of the country, ranting about immigration, calling him slurs, and saying he was taking jobs from real Americans. So I jumped in. "Hi, sir. What seems to be the problem?" "Are you the manager?" "I am. Can you fill me in on what's upsetting you tonight?" "Well, this lazy Mexican is refusing to sell me a baked potato when I know you have them." "Sir, I'm sorry, but we are out of baked potatoes for the night." "Is there anything else I can get for you?" "That's bullcrap. Make more then." "Sir, the baked potatoes take 4 hours to cook and we close in 10 minutes. Unfortunately, we can't predict exactly how many potatoes will be ordered, and it looks like someone else bought the rest of what we had just before you arrived. Is there something else I can get you?" "You should be better prepared because this is ducking ridiculous." "I understand. Is there anything else I can get you?" "Small salad. Extra ranch." "Got it. Anything else?" "And I don't mean 1 or 2 packets like you idiots always give me. I mean I want lots of ranch, like I want a ton of ranch. Got it?" "Got it. Please pull forward." Ducking idiots. At that point, I was pretty mad about the way he had spoken to John. John was clearly distressed. And I had just done inventory. I also had an entire box of ranch packets that I was going to need to throw out that night because they expired the next day. So I grabbed a large bag and started filling it with packets of ranch. I must have put around 250 ranch packets in there. My kitchen was busting up laughing. I took the man's money and handed him the bag. "What the duck is this?" "Sorry?" "Why is there so much ranch?" "Sir, you asked for extra ranch." "Are you ducking kidding me? Did I not give you enough? I can get you more if you want." "No, you stupid ducking idiot. I want a ducking refund and I'm not taking all this ranch." "Well, I can't take food back through the window. It's policy. Here's your refund, though. Now take back all this ranch, you dumb whore." "I can't do that." "Sorry, sir. You have a good night, though." Then I closed the window. This man would not leave. I told everyone to ignore him and just start cleaning up. He actually sat there for 45 minutes. At some point, he called the police. A police officer showed up, and I explained, yeah, this man berated my employees, demanded extra ranch, then refused to leave even after I gave him a refund. He was arrested in our parking lot for driving under the influence while we all watched and laughed. I thought he was just an angry bigot. Turns out he was a drunk, angry bigot who got himself arrested over ranch. The next one is an entitled people story. My mother does not speak much English, so she often uses me, her oldest child, as a translator for basically everything she does. 2 days ago, my mother bought a pan. Afterwards, she realized it was too high maintenance and decided she did not want it anymore. Unfortunately, the return policy at that store says that in order to return an item, the item must be unused. She had already put the pan on the stove and tried cooking with it to see the results. She absolutely hated it, so she wanted me to help her return it. In my head, I already knew the employees obviously were not going to take it back, but she urged me to go with her anyway. When we got there, the woman at the counter said, "You have used the item. The return policy says the item must be unused for a return." I translated the exact same thing to my mother again. My mother immediately had an outburst and said, "If I didn't use it, how would I know whether it was good or not?" She kept saying that she had only bought it a few days ago and that she obviously had to use it before knowing whether she wanted it. I told her again that the pan had been used and she could not return a used pan. The pan also had visible stains on it from being used, which showed that it was considered not returnable according to the store policy. She yelled at me in the middle of the store because she wanted me to keep arguing with the woman at the register about it, and I refused because the woman had already said no. My mother said that my only job is to translate for her and not to add my personal opinion. She said I always fail at my job, but she bought the pan knowing what type of pan it was. It was a carbon steel pan, and she knew the high maintenance that comes with that kind of cookware. She bought it anyway. Now I am home, listening to my mother complain about how she was right and how she had to use the item before knowing whether it was good or bad. But the return policy clearly states that products can only be returned if they are unused. My mother also said that if I had talked to the woman long enough, we might have been able to convince her to return the money to us. I believe that is very unlikely. I am not sure what my mother expected me to do. Was I supposed to argue with the older woman at the return register and give her a hard time until she refunded us? She already said she would not be able to return the item for us, so I do not understand what the big deal was. The next one is an entitled parent story. I developed a severe health condition. My mother has been very dismissive since it started and yelled at me and called me weak while I was stressed and trying to explain a constellation of symptoms that included severe insomnia. Some nights I got 30 minutes of sleep and I could not get over 3 hours for weeks. She would tell me, I don't sleep either, but I still have to be functional. When I mentioned the shortness of breath that makes me unable to lay down to sleep and the chest pain, she would say that this situation is causing her chest pain and shortness of breath and never acknowledges what I'm going through. She has to always one-up or ignore me. I found a specialist who diagnosed me, but before going to him, she called the crisis team and told them lies. She blurted out that I had bipolar, which I was never diagnosed with. I was taken to the psych ward and was dismissed as just being depressed, and I looked through my health record and see that questions I answered no to, like if I experienced a loss of pleasure, were put as a yes. Depression makes zero sense. I also am severely allergic to cats. They trigger constant discomfort with my asthma, and I can't take my asthma medication due to bad reactions now, but had to take it because she just got a cat, which made me feel so horrible that the tons of medication that should be able to sedate an elephant could not cut through and make me sleep. I told her not to get a cat because she kept talking about it. Despite my new doctor and psychiatrist supporting me in my recovery, she doesn't believe me, but burned incense recently because a psychic said that there's a spirit attached to me. She's also bought me a pair of shoes I said I hate multiple times and said, I just think there's something every young girl should have. I didn't react because I felt like it was to just upset me and toy with my emotions. She's pushed me to react before and then mocked me. She will throw what she does for you in your face because she sees herself as a good mother and can't take blame. She will blame the world, her childhood, lie, and say you were nasty to her first. Lie and say she didn't do or say something minimizes, dismisses, mocks, or invalidates and told me that I'm just an ungrateful bad daughter. Or she emotionally collapses and whines saying, I guess I'm just the worst mother. Once she blew up on me for not complimenting her work resume. She handed it to me with a smile and said, It's my resume. I didn't know what to say because I wasn't experienced with making a resume and had no feedback, but she quickly blew up when I didn't say much. She's forced hugs and kisses when I'm not looking and laughed when I get annoyed and has sat on my bed repeatedly asking me to tell her that I love you. If you calmly stand up for yourself and say something logical, she gets offended and will be quiet, but later will look for a way to get back at you by trying to nag you about something unimportant if she doesn't just blow up with anger and tears first. I'm also homebound because of this health issue. Despite this issue affecting me so severely and having extreme abnormal swings in my blood sugars and insulin needs and now having high blood pressure, she continues to insist I am just depressed and not trying hard enough. My doctor said I can't work for a year and need total rest. She supports the psychiatrist that dismissed me and a medical staff that put lies in my report. I can't leave because of how severe my health issue is, and talking causes shortness of breath and flare-ups, but she keeps insisting and commanding that I see a therapist and is clearly annoyed that I have to rest so much and wants me to work. I just want to be left alone so I can properly recover. For years, my mother has had inappropriate emotional expulsions and has wanted to undermine my independence. She was clearly upset when I was trying to leave for a trade school that will give me stable work and kept giving suggestions to do art. I'm artistic, but I never wanted to talk to her about school since she randomly blew up and put her whole body weight into slamming the door when I mentioned art schools I was looking into as a teen. She also blew up when I asked what was going on with my credit card that she had taken out without my permission, and when I asked questions about my phone bill. She also made a huge, exaggerated frown when I said I was separating my phone bill from hers. She would ignore me when she got a boyfriend, and the annoying many phone calls she would make because she's worried would stop, but issues with the boyfriend would make her mood unpredictable. She's went through many terrible ones and can't read people. She was friends with someone who would often bring up how they killed pets brutally and didn't care that that made her children disgusted, and she only broke it off with this friend when she learned she was gossiping about her. She has critiqued my resting facial expression for years for being too serious and for being too quiet, and has expressed multiple times that I remind her of my father's sister who she can't stand. There have been arguments simply because she has asked me over and over again, "What's wrong?" when I was fine, but eventually got angry that she kept pestering me about my face and for looking upset when I wasn't at all. She admitted to taking out her anger on her children because of one of the boyfriends, but then expects us to be fine about that and immediately get over it and forgive. She got upset when I paid off a large school loan as a teen using my own money because she felt entitled to using it to pay her bills. She will say she's so exhausted from being a single working mother and will bring that up when I tell her my doctor sent an email explaining my condition. She's too tired to read it to understand my health apparently, but she's on YouTube and watches the TV for hours, talks to her friends for hours, and went to 2 parties since this started. Growing up, she complained about being broke. We needed school supplies for weeks and she complained that the calculator costed too much money, but she immediately gave $300 to a friend during this period of asking for school supplies. When called out on that, she just starts crying and getting angry. She's shown clear jealousy when not the center of attention and of my good relationships. She's gone through my privacy. She read my journal and read my text messages. She said, "I don't want you to think I was going through your phone, but I was reading your text messages." She has never apologized once. She may act like she's your personal servant after a dumb argument and ask you if you need her to buy anything or buys you something from the bakery in place of an apology. I'm in family therapy with her, my brother and I. She cries in the therapy and says she loves her kids a lot. I don't believe it. When the therapist tried to help set a simply boundary around not repeatedly asking me how I'm feeling when I already answered, she got defensive. I only suggested the therapy to get her off my back. I've never trusted her. I don't love her and never have. What mental illness do you think she has? Anyway, thank you for watching.